Perfect. So my name is Tandazila Kuzviwanza, and I'm the Director of Policy and Research here at the Provincial Employment Roundtable. Today, I am excited to welcome you all to our webinar that marks the re-release of our report, Quebec and the Rest, a survey of national and international approaches to adult language training. In today's webinar, we will be previewing our upcoming report and providing an overview of the project and our key findings. This report is part of our growing research portfolio on adult French language training in Quebec and will be released next week on September 11th. Following my brief presentation, we will have a panel discussion with two expert panelists who have direct experience with adult second language training in two of the jurisdictions that we surveyed in our report, which are New Brunswick and Wales. So today we have with us Donna Lewis from Wales and Nicole Poirier from New Brunswick, who I will introduce later and invite to share their perspectives with us. Finally, I'll leave some time at the end for a quick audience Q&A, so please remember to post any questions you have throughout the presentation, and I'll make sure I go to them at the end, and we'll do our best to address them. Just to note that this webinar is being recorded, so the recording will be available later on our YouTube channel should you like to reference it. Before I move any further, I would like to acknowledge that the Provincial Employment Roundtable is situated on unceded Indigenous land. The Kanien'kehá:ka Nation is recognized as the custodians of these lands and waters. Chichoge, or Montreal, is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today, it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations. So let's jump straight into our research project. It is titled Quebec and the Rest, a survey of national and international approaches to adult language training. In this report, our main objective was to first survey how various jurisdictions in Canada and around the world have deployed adult language training. And second, identify some of the best practices that could be translated and imported to the Quebec context. So what was our methodology? Our methodology included desk research on the language training approaches of various jurisdictions in Canada and worldwide. This was done by surveying government websites and secondary literature on language planning, policies, and programming. The research was then narrowed down to jurisdictions with robust language learning policies and adult language training programs. Government-funded language training programs were prioritized for our research, as well as some select public-private, private, and community partnership programs. Secondly, we conducted semi-structured informational interviews with subject matter experts who possess direct knowledge or direct experience with the language learning approaches of various jurisdictions. In total, we interviewed 7 subject matter experts who were academics from universities across Canada with expertise in language policies and second language acquisitions, as well as government representatives from the select jurisdictions. Our research focused on the current frameworks for adult language training, the linguistic context and policies towards linguistic minorities in the jurisdiction, government-sponsored programs and initiatives that have been implemented to improve adult language learning outcomes, and lastly, adult language training initiatives for language learners looking to integrate into the labor market. After that, we synthesized the data to produce overviews of the language training frameworks of various jurisdictions. We then narrowed down the number of jurisdictions according to jurisdictions that were currently deploying government-sponsored adult language training, jurisdictions where there was sufficient public information available on their language training frameworks, and jurisdictions that have similar demographic dynamics to Quebec, such as an aging population, a lower birth rate, and global migration. Jurisdictions that did not meet these criteria were excluded. So this left us with 6 main jurisdictions in our report. We covered New Brunswick, Ontario, Wales, Catalonia, the Basque Autonomous Community, and Finland. We looked at these 6 jurisdictions, and where appropriate, we compared them to how Quebec fares with its adult language training framework. So what did we find? In our review of the language planning and adult language training approaches of the select jurisdictions, we identified multiple priorities that are informing government's language training frameworks. I'm going to share these approaches that we identified, as well as some comparisons that we were able to draw to Quebec's adult language training framework. Firstly, multi-stakeholder collaboration. Several jurisdictions in the studies relied on multi-stakeholder collaboration in order to achieve their adult language learning objectives. Multi-stakeholder collaboration includes the development of partnerships with organizations in the public and private sector, including community organizations, municipalities, and employers to improve the delivery of adult language training. Wales, Finland, the Basque Autonomous Community, Catalonia, and Ontario all deploy multi-stakeholder approaches where their government funds, supports, coordinates, and consults with municipal agencies and community stakeholders to develop and implement language training programs. This multi-stakeholder model promotes collaboration between the government and the community, as well as the private sector in some cases, to take language training beyond the classroom and directly into the community, the workplace, and society at large. This model posits new language acquisition as a collective effort with significant financial support and coordination coming from the government. Comparatively, the Quebec government also leverages multi-stakeholder models in the delivery of its French language training programs, particularly for immigrants. It partners with post-secondary institutions, language schools, and community organizations to support integration. However, many of these programs, as I just mentioned, are targeted exclusively to immigrants, so more work needs to be done towards expanding these programs to make them more widely available. An example of this is in Finland. So the Finnish government provides government-funded language training courses to newcomers in Finnish and Swedish. Immigrants are informed of Finland's bilingualism and its importance for labor market integration and can choose their language of integration between Finnish and Swedish. As part of the strategy to help immigrants integrate into Finnish society, municipalities are tasked with designing integration programs that are based on individuals' needs within their chosen municipalities. Integration services include language training programs, interpretation services, help with job seeking, social welfare, healthcare, and education. The personalized integration plans involve national, regional, and municipal government support. They conduct these through reception and organization centers for immigrants that are managed by municipalities and funded by state budget. Language training is considered a necessary component of newcomers' labor market integration. Adult education centers and universities are the primary providers of adult language training in Finnish and Swedish, and courses are offered and available for free to residents at various proficiency levels. Notably, Finland's Employment and Economic Development Office also offers employment services specifically for linguistic minorities as part of its labor market integration program. They host a career fair for job-seeking international applicants and employers that do not require a high level of Finnish competencies. Immigrants with desired skills and qualifications can be placed in jobs where English is more prominent, with the expectation that they will enroll in Finnish or Swedish language training while they're in the job. The next approach we identified was language skills assessment. So all jurisdictions in this study invest in language skills assessment programs, which have varying degrees of accessibility to the public. Assessment programs are important in helping language learners who struggle to self-assess their own language skills, and they can be used by governments to match language learners to the correct language training programs that meet their language learning needs. Language skills assessments can evaluate different language competencies, including listening, speaking, reading, and writing. This type of data helps language learners to track their own progress and identify areas for improvement. In Quebec, newcomers have access to a language assessment program. However, it is not yet widely available to all members of the public. So a good example of a language assessment program is in Ontario. Ontario has a coordinated language assessment and referral system. They're called CLARS centers. So these CLARS centers are a network, and through this network, the Ontario government, offers free language assessment and referral services across the province. It is the product of a provincial federal partnership to create a CLARS advisory committee, which are language training experts and representative stakeholders who guided the establishment of this network. CLARS allows for coordinated language assessments and referrals where people can come in, get an English or French language skills assessment, and are directed to appropriate language training programs across the province. The next approach we identified is linguistic data collection. Jurisdiction-wide collection of linguistic data allows governments to track the progress and effectiveness of their language training policies and initiatives. In Wales and Catalonia, governments regularly collect linguistic competency data to track the population's speaking, listening, writing, and reading skills to measure the effectiveness of their policies and develop more responsive programs. In terms of Quebec, Quebec does not currently collect linguistic data on French language competency levels. However, through the census, which is collected every 5 years, there is some language data available. However, more regular and granular linguistic data collection is needed at the provincial level. So this is the Catalonian example of detailed linguistic data. So through the census, Catalonia breaks down linguistic competencies in the population by understanding, speaking, reading, writing, and this is for 4 languages in the region, including Catalan, Spanish, English, and French. They also query for further details on how and where languages are being often spoken. So for example, they'll ask people if they're speaking mostly in the home, in the workplace, with friends, in texts, or even at the doctor's office. All this data helps inform better program design to better address where language training is needed and what types of programs would better facilitate language learning. Next, we have a one-stop shop information hub. So the primary goal of a centralized hub is to facilitate and coordinate resources in the language training ecosystem, as well as improve the accessibility and findability of information for all stakeholders involved, including learners, employers, and teachers. Centralizing information on language training helps provide language learners, as well as the employers, the teachers, and supporting organizations with access to the most current and comprehensive information on adult language training within the jurisdiction. For example, the Quebec government has several online resources that provide French language training information to learners and employers who are looking to enroll in work integrated language training. Through its new francisation website and the Office québécois de la langue française, Quebec provides pedagogical tools for French language teachers and self-learners, job-specific French language training, and a list of Québécois cultural media. Next, we have technology-assisted learning. So this was a key approach that we saw particularly in Wales. The Welsh government has led the development of its language policies that intersect with digitization and new language technology. Its Welsh Language Technology Action Plan is a comprehensive strategy that aims to leverage technological innovations for language learning and language revitalization. The plan includes the establishment of digital infrastructures that facilitate the learning and use of Welsh. Currently, the Quebec government does not have a technology strategy for language learning. The Quebec government, however, has previously made significant investments to improve the technology infrastructure for other key priorities such as healthcare and social services and environmental technologies. This focus on technology infrastructure can be extended towards language learning and with the goal of improving digital French language training programs in Quebec. So just an example of what we were talking about with Wales, as part of its Learn Welsh initiative, the Welsh government provides digital resources that offer additional language learning for individuals who are interested in taking courses. So this includes virtual courses for self-learners to practice and improve their Welsh without taking a certified course. Courses are open to anyone and they have multiple learning units. The learning units are divided into various levels of advanced difficulties. Learning units include reading, speaking, listening, and writing language skills with over 100 hours of learning units. They also, on their Learn Welsh website, offer language learners other informal language learning opportunities. This includes social activities, music, TV shows, reading lists, and language hubs where individuals can learn Welsh while participating in cultural activities. And that brings us to our last approach, which is informal and volunteer-based opportunities. So in order to achieve fluency in a target language, language learners must move beyond the classroom. Several jurisdictions in this report promote volunteer-based mentoring and pairing programs that provide language training. To supplement these programs, jurisdictions such as the Basque Autonomous Community, Wales, and Finland also fund and promote other informal learning options such as workshops, cultural activities, and community events that are specifically targeted at language learners. Informal language training settings can encourage hesitant language learners to practice their language skills in a non-classroom environment and help language learners to navigate various social and professional contexts. Quebec currently funds the delivery of informal and volunteer language learning opportunities, which are primarily targeted at newcomers. So programs such as intercultural twinnings, French conversation groups, and workshops on Quebecois expressions and cultures are offered across the province, and usually in the context of francisation for immigrants. So an example of this is Catalonia. So the Catalonia Consortium for Linguistic Standardization is a non-centralized regionalized network of language standardization and training centers that are created to foster the use of the Catalan language. They coordinate multiple language learning programs and initiatives. So we highlighted this one because they have a program where they encourage volunteers to help with Catalan language learning. These types of programs pair an elder from the minority language with a younger person who's interested in learning Catalan. And our last approach here is private sector and workforce-oriented training. So in Ontario, Wales, and Finland, governments fund workforce-oriented language training programs to improve language learners' proficiencies while increasing their employability and providing them with sector-specific language training. The Ontario Bridge Training Program helps immigrant language learners obtain a certificate or a license to practice a profession or a trade at the same time that they're enrolled in a language learning course. Similarly, New Brunswick's Internationally Trained Workers Program supports workers with previous professional experience and provides them with language and professional support to help them enter the labor market. Bridging programs deserve special attention here. They are avenues for skilled talent to overcome language barriers and find meaningful work. While Quebec funds workforce-oriented French language training programs, more bridging programs are needed to integrate professional skills and language training as dual objectives that provide pathways for language learners to enter the labor force. Bridging programs specifically designed for graduates from English language vocational schools, colleges, cégeps, and universities would be particularly needed in the Quebec context. So this is just an example of what New Brunswick had. So through their Collège Communautaire du Nouveau-Brunswick, the CCNB offers the Internationally Trained Workers Program. So this program is a provincially funded language training program, which is delivered by a language learning center in New Brunswick. It's a 12-week program that helps immigrants who already have international work experience to acquire English or French language, occupation-specific vocabulary, communication skills, and cultural diversity skills to help them better integrate into their field of employment. The program prioritizes individuals from identified priority fields, such as IT and engineering, and programmers and data analysts and developers as well. Perfect. So this brings us to our recommendation. So we made some recommendations based on the findings from this report. The first recommendation for Quebec is to establish a province-wide network of French language assessment and referral centers to provide free and affordable assessments in partnership with community organizations, schools, and language centers. Secondly, is for Quebec to regularly collect linguistic data in order to better track French language competency levels in the population. Third, create volunteer language training programs to match language learners with fluent French language speakers. Fourth, leverage the private sector to increase workforce-oriented language training. So for this example, we're specifically thinking of employers, bridging programs, and organizations that would help bridge people's professional skills with their language learning needs. Fifth, we have increased collaboration between the government, the community sector, and the private sector to expand the provision of adult French language training programs. Next, develop a one-stop shop online for a government platform to provide all resources and information related to adult French language training in Quebec. The platform should provide diverse learning resources for language learners, information for employers to participate in work-integrated language training, and pedagogical resources for French language teachers. Information on French language training should be made available in multiple languages to increase accessibility for linguistic minorities. And lastly, we have develop and implement a strategy to better leverage technology to improve learner outcomes. So this includes increasing production of and access to online French language training content, investing in learning technologies to facilitate autonomous learning, improving digital literacy amongst all Quebecers, and expanding high-speed internet infrastructure to support online learning. So with that, I'm going to end my presentation and we're going to switch over to our panelists. I'm going to invite Donna and Nicole to turn on their cameras. Hello, perfect. So with us today, we have two panelists who are experts who are actively working in the domain of adult language training. First, we have Nicole Poirier. So she is the director of the Language Learning Center at Collège Communautaire du Nouveau-Brunswick and has more than 25 years of experience in the field of second languages. Mrs. Poirier works with her team to position CCNB as a leader in language assessment and training in Atlantic Canada. Through her commitment and sense of leadership, Mrs. Poirier is driven by a strong determination to contribute to the success of government strategies regarding the integration and retention of French and English-speaking immigrants within Canada's Francophone community. She is currently piloting a national project in order to develop a national FSL teacher training program. She also has extensive experience on national committees involved in second language methodology, evaluation, and training, including the National Language Advisory Committee of Immigration Canada, the Pan-Canadian Advisory Committee for Language Training for Immigrants in a Minority Francophone Community, which is the Center for Canadian Language Benchmarks, and has recently been nominated to the Comité Consultatif National en Établissement Francophone. Welcome, Nicole. Glad to have you. And next we have Donna. Donna Lewis has developed her career in a variety of roles with Humanidad Meithrin, I hope I pronounced that right, Donna, which is the largest provider of Welsh medium, childcare, and early years education. She worked as Director of Administration, Deputy Chief Executive, and Interim Chief Executive before joining the National Centre for Learning Welsh, which is the body responsible for the Learn Welsh sector in 2016. Donna was initially appointed as the Deputy Chief Executive and Director of Planning and Development at the Center, leading on corporate quality, finance, and digital transformation. Donna has also been responsible for developing innovative schemes such as the WorldQuest program, which we're going to ask you about later, Donna, which strengthens the Welsh language skills in workplaces, and a new program offering Welsh language learning opportunities for 16 to 25-year-olds. In January of 2023, Donna was appointed to the role of Chief Executive of the Center. Creating new Welsh speakers is the aim of the Center, thereby contributing to their ambitious goal called CIMREG 2050, which is 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050. So 15,000 people use the Learn Welsh Center every year, and their courses include face-to-face and virtual learning and online self-study opportunities. Their Learn Welsh programs are also tailored to workplaces and sectors, families, asylum seekers, and refugees, and the education sector. And just a last one here, Donna has been a council member for the Adult Learning Wales since 2020, and has recently been appointed as a member of Welsh Government Health and Social Care Welsh Language Plan Advisory Board. So as you can all see, we have two great experts who can speak very well to the importance of adult language training. So I'm going to jump right in, and I have a question first for you, Nicole. So my question for you is, in the Center for Language Learning at the Collège Communautaire du Nouveau-Brunswick, you offer second language training in English and French for adults. What different types of learners register for your courses?
Okay, great. I first want to congratulate you on the work that you've done for this report. Wow, quite fantastic. So the types of clients that we serve, it varies, but I would say we do offer language training for Canadians, but the majority, I think, of the training that we offer are mostly for immigrants of various statuses, permanent residents, temporary foreign workers, international students, all of which really are looking for training to either settle in New Brunswick or more in Canada. But there's also a high number of clients that we have that are really looking towards employment type language training.
Great. And similar question for you, Donna. On your end, what types of learners tend to register for the programs at the Centre for Learning Welsh?
Hold on, making sure everything's unmuted here. So it's lovely to be with you today. I'm here from Wales. We have, I think you noted, we have about 15,000 learners who follow about 27,000 learning activities with us every year. One learner can follow more than one activity. They tend to be within the working age bracket. So about 85% of our learners are within the working age bracket. 13% will be between 16 and 24. 72% between 25 and 64, and then 15% will be with the 65-year-old and over. And it's changed over the last few years. Our audience in the past tended to be older, and we worked really hard to ensure that the profile is younger, that we attract a younger audience, while also making sure that we offer, something for everyone as well. About 12% of our learners learn from beyond Wales, so they would be in the UK or internationally, and they tend to be for family reasons. They have contacts back in Wales, but the majority of our learners are Wales residents who want to learn Welsh. We have 5 levels of learning in Wales, starting from beginners all the way up to proficiency. About 60% of our learners are on the beginning of their learning journey, so they would be on the first entry-level courses. And we focus on making sure that people use the Welsh that they have, regardless if they progress through the levels or not, and to make sure that they have enough confidence to use the level that they have. And I think that you've noticed that we have a variety of different offerings. We've tutor face-to-face offerings, virtual lessons with tutor. We also have self-study and blended courses. So people come to us looking for a variety of different ways of learning.
Okay, and just another question for you there, Donna. We highlighted the Centre for Learning Welsh as a prime example of an easy to navigate website. We had a screenshot of your website on there. So we also took note of the Welsh investment in their technology action plan, whose objectives are to create and sustain digital infrastructure to support Welsh language learning and develop a culture of open innovation to transform digital landscapes and encourage the use of Welsh across sectors. So could you tell us a little bit more about the technology action plan and your goals for that?
Yeah, so the technology action plan belongs to the Welsh Government here in Wales, and it's an overarching plan to ensure that Welsh as a language is up there with all the technology developments that happen at the moment. So I know that Welsh Government are in contact, for instance, with Microsoft, and ensuring that we have Welsh interface for the Microsoft programs, for instance, has been part of their drive. The National Centre itself, we have a digital scheme as well, and it's been a game changer, I would say, here in Wales for the Learn Welsh sector, especially when the pandemic hit. We were able to change our face-to-face learning lessons to being virtual learning lessons overnight. So 15,000 learners, 600 tutors, everybody changed overnight to be on the virtual learning path, and that's kind of driven us forward really about 4 or 5 years from where we thought that we would be from a digital perspective. So the digital platform that you showed a screenshot of earlier on has been one of our biggest investments, and we've invested fully in that over the last 5 years. It's a multi-layered platform. It includes many different aspects. It has a data management system within the platform. We have a learning management system that allows us to track each individual learner along their learning journey. Everybody has a My Learning area within the platform itself, so they can include resources and track their own learning. We have a virtual resource library that has about 15,000 digital resources on the platform as well. And learners can also come to the platform to search for all types of different courses, enroll and pay for those courses then via the digital platform. And we're constantly adding to the platform. We have a catch-up service that we've recently included as well, to allow people to catch up on lessons that they've missed, and to continue their learning in that way. We also have a third-party area which we tailor to different sectors, so sports and football and rugby. They all have their individual areas within the platform as well. And we also have an academy area for our tutors, and they have CPD, development professional learning through that area, and lots of different resources. And on the last count, I think we had about 85,000 individuals who had an account on the digital platform. So it's grown quite a lot since the establishment back in 2016.
That's great, and congratulations on the growth recently. I mean, even when we went on the website, it was just lovely to navigate it. It's very accessible, it's colorful, it's well organized, and those are some of the best practices that we noted. It's just being really helpful and encouraging people to embark on language learning. So just a follow-up question for you, Nicole. Given that you've been in the sector for 25 years now, I'm sure you've had opportunities to really watch the development of language learning technologies and the role of technology in language learning. And I just wanted to ask you, could you talk about the role of technology in supporting language learning, and how you see how we can better embrace, or perhaps, think about technology in that framework?
Okay, thank you. I think that, I think the pandemic really kind of pushed forward some of the things that people might have wanted to put in place technology-wise, that might have taken a little bit longer than what we, would have liked. But so at CCMB, through the Language Learning Center, we do have an LMS that we use, Desire to Learn. And within that, we also have, we developed hybrid language training that combines face-to-face video conferencing, but we also have a platform that our clients go to. They have access to it 24 hours, 7 days a week, some general language, and this is in either English or in French. There are actually other options on the platform that they can learn, but those are the ones that we focus on in our language training. And we also are working towards, we use with a lot of our language training, the CEFR. And we had more of like a paper copy portfolio, but we're almost at the end of developing our e-portfolio, which will follow the journey of clients that we have, including international students that we start even before they come and study at CCMB, some language training in English, because for them to find employment and stay in New Brunswick, they need to have a certain level of proficiency to find a job. So those are some aspects that we have online. In addition to that, we're actually working, we have a research project that we're doing right now in the Atlantic provinces that is analyzing how technology can play a role, but what are some of the challenges that we face when we have immigrants that live in rural areas that may not have access as easily as we do in urban areas. So those are some of the things that we've been working on in terms of technology.
Just a quick follow-up question there. So when you talk about internet infrastructure, right, and accessibility for online learning, are there challenges in terms of people being able to have access or adequate internet infrastructure?
Yes, yeah, because I think that there are still regions in the Atlantic provinces where access to the internet isn't as easy as that. And it doesn't really actually have to be that far. So what do we do in cases like that if we want to give them access to language training, but the technology, and internet is not at the level that it needs to be to take something online?
Mm-hmm. Okay. A specific question for you, Nicole. So the Center for Language Learning develops tailor-made language courses to learn English and French for personal and professional purposes. So for example, I mentioned the Internationally Trained Workers Program, which we were very excited to read about, where newcomers can receive language training for their prospective professional field. So based on your experiences, could you speak to the value of workforce-oriented language training programs and why you even bother to invest in those?
Yeah, wow, those are good questions. So there are actually 3 different projects that we developed that are geared towards employment. The one that you're talking about is NewNB, which is Newcomers Empowered to Work in New Brunswick. And that specifically was for people that have a certain level. They're maybe already at an intermediate level in the target language, but they don't have the terminology, the cultural awareness of the types of that's used in that field. So that program was actually, it is really, really good. And we had like 5 different areas that we looked at, including information technology, accounting, business, and health. We also have another one, BOLT, which is the blended online language training that is specific for people that are looking for employment. So immigrants, when they come, that are permanent residents, they do have access to free language training. However, it's a general language training. And when they really need to get to work, because, you know, they've come here, they've immigrated, and that's the first thing that they're going to be looking for. So we actually we developed frameworks of references, language references based on the field that they are going to work. So once we know what level and what skills they need to learn within that program, we help guide them to get to that level of proficiency that employers are seeking. That has been really a game changer, because not everybody needs to be completely bilingual. And most times people don't really understand what that means. You know, when you have employers that are already busy just trying to find employees, they don't have time to be to try to understand what level of proficiency, somebody needs. The other program that we have too is with the increase of Ukrainians that arrived, we had 600 referrals. And, you know, there are people again looking for employment. So it's similar to BOLT. And this was more specific to English language training. We do have one more if you have just another minute.
Yes, please.
Okay, we actually developed a specific program for international students that are registered in our regular programs. And like I mentioned a while ago, where English is essential in the workplace in New Brunswick, and especially in certain fields like health and business. So we actually developed a program that the moment that these students are accepted into our programs, we contact them directly while they're in their countries, and we already start offering them language training, access to the language platform, and we follow them throughout the 2 years that they're at the college, so that by the end, when they graduate, that they'll be close to the level of proficiency they need to find employment.
Great, thank you. I have a similar question for you, Donna. So the Center for Learning Welsh runs the Work Welsh program, which we mentioned extensively in our report. They offer a range of fully funded programs that help bolster the use of Welsh as the language of work. So I wanted to ask you, could you speak to the role of multi-stakeholder collaboration between government, employers, and the education workforce in your approach to adult language training?
Yeah, so the scheme that you referred to is called Work Welsh, Cymraeg Gwaith here in Wales, and it offers free language training for employers. I think there's around 7,000 learners that follow that programme every year. It was established back in 2017. And since then, it's grown quite a lot in the way that we work in partnership with different sectors. And we find that the most efficient way of working is to establish a partnership with a body that has some kind of representation for a different sector. We work with them to tailor courses. We work with them to find the right employers. We work with them to ensure that strategically the scheme that we offer answers all of their needs. We have a new one, quite a large one here that we've just developed in health and care sector. We'll be working with all our health organisations here in Wales to make sure that they are part of the scheme. So we work really closely with Welsh Government policy advisors and policy leads to make sure that we sit within those different policy areas within Welsh Government. And through that, we also attract different strands of funding to tailor programmes for different sectors. Sport is quite a big one that we've developed recently. We work in conjunction with the football national team, the Welsh rugby national team. You might have heard of our success of Wrexham here with some of the Hollywood stars investing in the Welsh team here in Wales. And we're offering some of our services to them as well. There is an interesting development here within the education sector, so the statutory education sector. We've started to work with the education workforce and we'll be offering some training programmes for them. And the Welsh Government has recently published a white paper on a new education bill here in Wales as well. And the suggestion within that education bill is that the National Centre takes quite a huge leap forward and taking the lead on Welsh language learning for 5 years and upwards. So that means that in the future, we will be working across the education sector with the workforce, but also with the children themselves, which is quite a significant step for us and for Wales.
Great. So I'm going to shift us over to talk a little bit about innovation in adult language training. And this question is for the both of you. So in our report, we saw some innovative approaches in other jurisdictions. So for example, Finland has vocational training programs that include instruction in a second language, and they used SLIL, which is the Content and Language Integrated Learning Method. And in Catalonia, they have pairing mentorship programs where people can find work and they wear a button that says, I'm learning the language, and they have opportunities to interact with customers and learn the language on the job. So we noted those as, innovative and interesting approaches to language learning. And I wanted to ask you, what are your perspectives on these types of newer approaches to language learning? And I'm going to start with you, Nicole.
Yeah, I think that I think they're fantastic because I think, as an adult, when you're learning a language, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of energy. When they see a purpose at the end saying, you know what, this is the type of work that I want to do, and I'm going to focus on that field, it brings meaning and motivation to our clients. And I would say that this is something that we're doing within the regular programs at the community college. If we look at, we actually developed a standardized health assessment that our health network is using. So we can already start. We use this then with students that want to be in the health field. We can assess them, and then we can say, okay, this is what the level of proficiency the employer is looking for, and how can we support you along that path?
It's a great example. Donna, I'll throw it to you. Could you talk a little bit about your perspectives on the role of innovation?
Yeah, well, I would agree wholeheartedly. Language learning needs to evolve, doesn't it? It can't stay in the same place. And here in Wales, we have more choice than ever before about how you want to learn the language. And you don't necessarily need to go into a class with a tutor to learn for 120 hours, which is what our structure used to be here in Wales. We have different methods of learning and blended learning, self-study learning. And what we say is that, people can learn the language whenever and however they want. And I think it's really important to support external applications and methodology as well. We work, you mentioned Duolingo, we work closely with them. We have something else called Say Something in Wales, Say Something in Welsh here in Wales that teaches spoken Welsh only. And we embrace that. We bring them towards us in the national centre, and to make sure that we are a one-stop shop for all types of different learnings, not just our regular learning method as well. And in my opinion, the more practice, the better when it comes to learning the language. So the more choice you have and the more options that are available, the better. But from a personal perspective, I'm not sure if anything ever will replace the experience of learning a second language in a classroom with a tutor. But there's definitely, different approaches and more choices that can be an option.
I love that. Thank you both. Those are great examples. So I'm going to stop my questions here, and I'm going to leave some time for the Q&A box. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to post them. I see one here from Jacqueline. So Jacqueline left a comment saying it will be interesting to see how the new AI second language learning programs, such as LangoTalk, that is based on GPT-4. I haven't heard of LangoTalk. So we want to see how they perform in the coming years and if this will become a new recommended learning model. So just picking up on what we were just talking about, I'm curious, have you heard of this program? What do you think about the role of AI? I know it's very topical right now. I'll start with you, Nicole.
Well, I mean, how do we catch up with this Chat GPT? It's evolving when you think that it only came out in December, and look at what, all of these options and things that it has opened up. I think that there's always two sides of it. I think that sometimes there's a fear of new technology and but I think that sometimes, it's not going to disappear. So how can we use it to our advantage to move forward and think of, let's be creative, let's be innovative and say, how can this help people to use a language or to learn the language?
Mm-hmm. Donna, thoughts on AI?
Yeah, I would agree. It's such a massive field, isn't it? But as a minority language, you're always playing catch up with these things, aren't you? So, we feel here that we are behind when it comes to some of these developments, and there is investments here, to try and make sure that we do catch up. But yes, I'm sure that it will be the future in somewhere or other. But in the meantime, we still have to carry on doing what we do, don't we? And learn the language in the ways that we can at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, another question I have for you is on government supports. So a lot of this report, we focus specifically on government-sponsored and government-funded language training models. And I'm curious to hear from you, what kinds of government supports do second language service providers need in order to help adults learn a language? I don't know if anyone wants to take this. Maybe I can start with you, Nicole.
All right. Well, I think that if it's part of the policy in increasing proficiency or helping immigrants move to an area where, there's certain languages that are used, definitely needs support provincially and federally to be able to move this forward. I love the idea that there is kind of a national platform as in Welsh, but we don't have that. But I do feel that there is an increase in sorry, I'm just trying to think of the word. There's an increase in being aware and awareness of how important it is to learn the language. And if we want to be able to keep and retain immigrants in our regions, that is something essential.
Mm-hmm. Donna.
Yeah, I think we're quite fortunate here in Wales. We are fully funded by Welsh Government. Welsh Government has a policy of 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050, and we're on that journey with them. And what that allows, obviously, is to provide quality teaching and learning of the second language. It allows us to keep the cost of the language learning low, if not free, which the majority of it will be. And in our case, it was also really beneficial to establish that central body leading the second language providers here in Wales. In the past, there's been 11 different providers doing 11 different ways of teaching the language as as it was in the past. So the national body has been a significant change here in Wales. And I just told you about the white paper on the education bill and, you know, the opportunities that has been opened there. You know, we've taken on new responsibilities to learn the language to 16 to 18-year-olds. So that means higher education, further education in schools. So having that national body has definitely allowed the sector to move forward strategically. And I think that that's only been done with Welsh Government support and funding.
Mm-hmm. So we have a comment here from Suzanne. So she is where they are an ESL teacher in Quebec. And they ask, how could we support our immigrants who are also learning English, which is important for employment? So looking at the other side of people who want to learn English. Any comments there, Nicole?
I think that I completely understand when we also, you know, if we switch it where we teach French oftentimes in minority communities. So how do you reach out and how do you give them the opportunity to practice speaking the language when they're surrounded by their first language? So it definitely is a good question. It's really being innovative and finding places where, you know, where there may be opportunities for them to be exposed to the language. So yeah, I completely understand your situation.
Okay. So I had another question for you both. So this is more of a creative one. So I'd like each of you to picture your ideal adult language learning program. So what type of elements would be key to include in the design and implementation of this program? So I'll give you maybe just a few seconds to think about it. But I know you all have already fantastic programs, but I'd love to hear maybe something else that you'd like to see if maybe funding or resources weren't a limitation. If it's okay, I'll start with you, Dana.
Yeah, well, I think that what you're doing is actually fantastic. You know, learning lessons from each other is definitely something that we should all be doing. You know, especially when you're on the beginning of a journey as well. And you know, we've done that. Some of our schemes are based on learnings from other countries. You know, they've grown since since then, and the partnerships you know, continue internationally. So I think that's definitely a really important element. One of the first priorities in the National Centre was to establish a curriculum, and that curriculum is underpinning everything that we do. It's based on things like the CEFA, you know, ESOL, so the European languages and English as a foreign language. You know, we've drawn from all of them to create this curriculum, and that absolutely underpins everything that we do. All the courses and resources was developed on that curriculum, and they are now looking at embracing that curriculum and that idea of the basis of the curriculum for the statutory education Welsh language learning here in Wales as well. So I would say that that curriculum has absolutely been you know, a core point of everything that we've done. And you know, I think that evolving and, you know, being flexible and you know, changing the way that you do things along the way has also been a really important element of the National Centre. We're definitely not the same centre we were 3, 4, 5 years ago, and I'm sure we won't be the same centre in 3 or 4, 5 years in the future either. So I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. I love that emphasis on evolving, right? Just and making sure that you're not sticking to the same old things, even though sometimes that works, but it's good to maintain that openness. Nicole, any elements in your ideal program design?
Well, I think that I will emphasize as well the same thing that Donna said, is that you know, we all evolve, and so do our programs need to evolve so that we really meet the needs of our clients. I think that that a program needs to be based on a framework, a little bit like what Donna mentioned about the curriculum. We use 2 depending on the type of clients that we serve, so the CFR or the CLB. Creating having teacher training programs, I think is something that, you know, is important so that the teachers have the tools and techniques of how to teach the language, so that it's a little bit more, that we can see results with the clients that we're teaching. Absolutely shared practices. I think that having things like this, I'm where you have the chance to find out what's going on in other countries, and then from there say, okay, I think that this would fit with what our needs are. So I would say that those are the items that I would mention.
Just picking up on what you said about teachers, you probably are much more aware of this context in Canada, Nicole, but there's a huge shortage, right, in French language teachers in Quebec, but also across Canada. I don't know if it's the same context for you, Donna, but I'd be curious just to hear from you both about just ensuring that on the supply side that we have the adequate quality and quantity of teachers to deliver these programs.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think maybe I'd just like to mention the teacher training program that we developed. We received funding through the federal to develop a program for teachers, similar to the TESOL, Teachers of English Second Language, a micro certificate that is going to be accessible nationwide. It's not just, it's online, hybrid. There's a tutor there that helps to go through. We have a lot of different modules, including how to teach in minority communities. So I know that there was a teacher that was saying, how do you teach ASL? Well, you know, there's probably some tips in that program, that module, that could be useful. So definitely need to, and that I think will help in supporting, because I know that there's a shortage of about 10,000 teachers across Canada for FSL. That was one of the reports that came out through Consult. So there's definitely a need, and how can we at least support that with teacher training?
Donna, I'll let you have the last word here. Anything on teaching?
Yeah, it's a similar picture here in Wales. You know, we have a huge shortage of teachers in the education statutory sector, and that's definitely something that's been addressed in that education bill that I mentioned a couple of times. And our input into that hopefully will be to train the workforce as well. We have about 600 tutors, we call them tutors, within our structure here. And, you know, there's always a need for them, but some of our learners become tutors, and I think that that's a fantastic end to their journey as well, isn't it? But yeah, I think it's the same issue here as well.
Well, I'm looking at the time, so unfortunately we do have to bring our webinar to a close. I'd like to thank you both, Donna and Nicole, for sharing your time with us over the past hour. It's been so great learning from your knowledge and your experiences in Wales and New Brunswick, and congratulations on all your accomplishments. I think there are many things that we can learn on our end, right, about how to improve French language training in Quebec. And this does bring our webinar to a close. I'd like to thank our audience for joining us for this insightful discussion. We look forward to sharing the report with you, which will be coming out next week on September 11th.